Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Event Sustainability Live, brought to you by Event Industry News and Evolution Dome. My name is Zach Goodman. I'm the host over the 2 days, and I'm part of the DRPG team who have brought you this fabulous stage. Before I introduce our next session, I just want to make sure that you know you probably do now, basically the headphones will give you better audio, so if you want to pop those on, get any problems, talk to the crew at the back. We've got captions on the side there. If you want them in any other languages, please download the Interprify app. And we've got Slido questions there through the QR code. If not, I will just come with a microphone at the end of the session. I am going to hand over to Louisa Watson from Wyboston Lakes, who's going to run this panel for me. Over to you, Louisa.
Thank you. It's working. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Navigating Sustainability and Metrics, Decoding Event Impact Assessment for Conference Organisers today. So we're going to explore a topic. It's a timely topic, and it's a pivotal one for the events industry as it evolves to meet the demands of this changing environment, this changing world. So the events industry has long thrived on bringing people together, thankfully, and creating these meaningful interactions that we have. But it's now at this unique crossroads. And it's a crossroads where sustainability isn't just an option, it's an imperative. And what's happening at the moment, and what we're going to see happening in the future, is that attendees and delegates like ourselves here today are not going to be saying what's on the agenda. We're going to be saying, what's the carbon footprint of this event? And we're going to evaluate the quality of the ethical sourcing of products and catering, not just the quality of the speakers. And the success of the event won't solely be measured on the attendance numbers, but on its positive or negative impact on the venue and the surrounding communities and the environment that we live. So this transformation is a challenge for all of us, and it requires us all, booking agents, venues, suppliers, etc., to think differently, be innovative, and embrace sustainability as an integral part of what we do. And I have a wonderful panel of experts with me today that are going to talk and share some of their experiences. So I'm going to hand over to you first, Judith, just to introduce themselves and tell us a bit about what they do and the companies that they work for.
Hello, I'm Judith. I'm the Sustainability Specialist at Conference Care. We are an events agency. We kind of describe ourselves as an events agency. We're event professionals who have a passion for sustainability. So I kind of lead that sustainability drive within the company, but we also do venue finding. We do sort of events management. We do digital services as well. My colleague Sally does that over there. She's totally taken a photo. And within that, we also operate our carbon consultancy service. So that's this product we provide where we do all the measurement of your carbon footprint of your event for you. So it's almost like a before and after process. So we will collect that data based on stuff that you already have as event professionals. So you'll already have this data. It's already part of your kind of setup. We then will process that data, give you a carbon footprint, and then we can kind of make practical suggestions of how to reduce it. So we try and take the hard work out. So we make it so that we kind of do that hard work for you, and it kind of takes that time pressure away. But hopefully at the end you'll have a lovely carbon footprint and some ways to reduce it for next year. And that's about it really for me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anastasia, and I work for Marble, a global experiential agency based in London, and we organize events in the UK and overseas, different types of events, including conferences, and I am a sustainability coordinator, so my job involves looking after sustainability initiatives within the agency and at the events we deliver, looking after our ISO certifications, spearheading our B Corp application. And we have a system called in place, we call it ESAP, Event Sustainability Action Plan, that helps us assess the sustainability performance of our events and report on the results and provide advice on what can be improved in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Rob. Hello. Try that again.
It's going to happen to someone.
Yeah. There we go. Hello, yeah, so my name is Rob Turnbull. I'm the Sustainability Manager at the Edinburgh International Conference Centre. So I've come from way up north to speak here today. I kind of have two responsibilities. So one is kind of looking after the building itself, looking at our carbon footprint, how we can improve that. And the other side of it is looking after clients when they come in saying like, you know, we want to make our event more sustainable, but we're not quite sure how, so maybe we can get a few pointers on that. So we have a program called Step Change, which has all our initiatives that clients come in, have a look at them, which ones they want to use, which ones they don't. Hopefully they use them all. I don't know what's going on with the microphone. Oh, right, there we go. So yeah, just try to advise the clients and also make the building more sustainable in itself.
Thank you. I think it's worth noting as well that Rob is an engineer by definition, and Judith is a scientist. Is that right? Scientist, engineer. And you're not purely events-based background, are you? Or
Originally, I'm a linguist.
Linguist. That was it. I remember linguist. So it's a nice mix of people that are out from outside of hospitality, which is really nice. So I just want to start by setting the foundation. And my first question really is about, from your perspectives, what's the most critical sustainability indicators that conference organisers should be measuring, and why? So maybe I could go to you first, Anastasia.
I would say all of them are critical, but if you were to put them in order of importance, the ones that make the most impact are the most critical. So normally, depending on the type of event, audience travel would be on top of the list. So you definitely need to measure audience travel, the trucking, delivery of tech to the event, and then catering is a big part of it as well. When we run our event sustainability action plan, we analyze everything, starting from transport to food, waste management. Inclusivity and access is part of it as well, because sometimes you forget about the social part of the sustainability.
And your event sustainability action plan, you run that before at planning stage, do you, rather than after the event?
The whole life cycle. In the planning stage and post-event as well, because certain questions need to be asked post-event. So if certain things were promised before the event, were they actually delivered? So you need to keep track of that as well.
Great.
Yep.
And Rob, what do you think?
So from a sort of engineering point of view, like you say, that's my background. I'm more concerned with sort of the energy usage and the waste generation. But I think, yeah, the travel as well, it can be like, up to like 70% basically of your CO2 emissions can be just people arriving at the event. So that's something we're trying to get more to grips with as a venue, and start looking at how people get there, how people arrive, stuff like that. So.
And we had a chat earlier. You started using an app called USmartThing. So how's that going?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. So that's been on a website since the start of August. So I don't know if anyone's from up north will have the festival in August. We turn into a festival venue. What's really been interesting is just looking at how many people actually use public transport. So I look at it sort of every day, and it's about 85% actually people travelling to our venue either using trains. We have the trams as well, walking, cycling, and that takes into account most of our travel. But there is people, because we're an international conference centre, people do fly to our venue. And unfortunately, that means about 3% fly, but that accounts for 75% of our CO2 emissions just from those that 3%.
Wow, that's a number.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Judith, what's your take?
Well, obviously, I'm a bit biased, so I do believe carbon is a really important metric. I think it encompasses so many things about sustainability from an environmental point of view. So it's like waste, travel, materials. Exactly. It's the whole part of environmental sustainability. But I think the one that people struggle more with is the kind of social sustainability. That's really hard to quantify, and it's almost like a bit how long is a piece of string as well. So I think setting your own metrics of what you think is important to achieve from your social sustainability, what's important for you as a company, and then finding a way to measure that so it's actually there's a numerical value against it. So I have seen some examples where people have measured like social value as a monetary value. So going, well, we have employed so many of these people, and because of that, we have created this much back into the, the community. Yeah, so I think that is probably going to be a bit of a trend, is really finding a way to quantify that really effectively. Yeah.
Interesting. We talked previously about venues for good, which I think is quite interesting. It's becoming quite a buzzword now, hasn't it? So it's not just about the single events that you put on, it's about what that venue means in that local community.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's an initiative we're trying to sort of get out there at the moment. It's basically our way of measuring of the venues that we work with within venue finding. How are they being sustainable, and how can they prove that? So I think we've also seen a trend within venues of them saying having a long-term plan, but not, having no way to kind of prove they're on the path to achieve it. So it's really easy to say you're going to be net zero by 2030, but we actually are trying to find a way to track that progress, and we've looked at it across sustainability as social as well. So we've got kind of key indicators around like how much do you do in the local community? Do you do anything to sort of tackle the different UN Sustainable Development Goals? So it's all kind of around that. So yeah, that's our kind of badge for our venues, basically.
So just moving on to a practical implementation perspective, and the agents here, you represent large organisations and large corporates, and to the venue as well, you obviously deal with large corporates as well. Can you tell me is it within the decision-making process when selecting event venues and destinations? What are the buyers actually thinking, and how has sustainability impacted their decision? And have you got any examples of where that's happened for you? Rob, can you?
Yeah, so we're starting to see a lot more now that when people come to the venue, they're a lot more interested in sustainability. So they'll have, in their proposals, they'll say like, what's your sustainability policy? What's your purchasing policy? Do you track your carbon emissions? And that's stuff that's not really been in there before, which is where I come in. Whenever they get asked these questions, it's like, roll Rob out, you'll go and have a chat with them. But yeah, that's definitely coming more to the forefront when people are actually selecting venues. They're more interested in what your sustainability practices are.
Do you think it's more than just a tick box exercise now? Because that did happen a few years ago. Do you think people are beginning to get to grips with it and understand it more?
I think so, yeah. People, although they're asking about it, they might not know what they're asking about it to begin with. But as it's gone on, people are more interested in like, well, okay, one of the things we do is have the carbon footprint of a menu. So when people come to select the menu for their event, we'll put all the different possible options, and most of them will go, wow, I didn't know beef was so high in carbon, high carbon footprint. Maybe we'll go for chicken. And it's just simple things like that just giving them the information allows them to make those, decisions beforehand before they actually go into it.
Thank you. And Anastasia, have you got some examples?
For us, when we do our venue search, there are certain things that are always important both for us and the client, and they are related to sustainability, which is proximity to the majority of attendees, because that reduces the carbon footprint of travel. Especially in London, there has to be public transport accessibility. And actually, we even have a whole checklist of things that we want the venue to meet the criteria. Things like whether they have renewable energy, whether their catering is sustainable, do they use local suppliers for their food, whether they have water-saving devices, things like that. But I wouldn't say...
Would that impact your decision to put them forward?
In terms of decision-making, from what our team are telling me, the accessibility part is the biggest one, but sadly, for our clients, sustainability within itself is not a priority enough. And that's something that we try to push forward and raise awareness among our clients. But this is something we're striving towards, and it's a big challenge for us to really make sure that for clients it's as valuable as it is for us.
And do you find that as well, Judith?
I think we're starting to see people getting engaged with it earlier in the process. So whereas before we would have people coming into sustainability probably 2 months out from the event and going, oh, I don't know what to do, we need to do something. we're now, for instance, we're working with a national association, and whereas we did have that kind of like a couple of months out, we would work with them attitude before, we're now working with them from the point of them saying, we need a venue for this event, and we've actually worked with them to map out all these aspects of a venue's sustainability delivery, but also where it is geographically, how people would actually travel there. So we've been able to map out, 5 options and go, this is going to have the lowest carbon footprint per delegate, and this is going to have the highest, and that can go into that buying decision. So they are asking for it now, yeah.
So I've got a question specifically for Rob, as he's a venue. What kind of practices have you implemented as a venue that makes you a much more attractive option for event organisers, for people like Conference Care and Marble London, that you can talk about?
Yeah, so our sustainability programme Step Change, it has 3 facets to it. So we have the climate action contribution, which means that every event that comes in looks to restore peatlands up in the north of Scotland, and peatlands are actually 4 times more effective at carbon sequestration than tree planting. We also have the desk to door policy, and that's where a smart thing comes in. So we look at how delegates actually travel to the event. And we also have the environmental impact report as well. So every event that comes into it, into the EICC, has the option to have an event report, and just looking at their energy usage, the waste, their food selection. We can even go down to the fact of measuring all the waste that they produced. So you can say how much cardboard they produced, how much plastic they produced. So next event that they hold, they can maybe say, all right, well, this time we produced too much plastic. We can actually then action that in our next event.
That's amazing.
Marble is coming to Scotland.
And then for our agents, sustainability and budget, how do they kind of fit together? Because there's this sort of, I often think there's this misconception actually that sustainability is more costly, but do you find that there is a balance and that bookers are actually willing to pay for some of those sustainability strategies that venues are put into place? Do you think they're accepting of that? Go on, Judith.
You're putting a lot of faces there. So, it really depends. It really depends on who you're working with. If they don't have budget aside, then it's really, really difficult. And it's having that budget aside at the start of the events programme. But I think you're absolutely right. It is a misconception. And a lot of sustainability is also, it's really boring, but it's paring things down. It's reducing your energy consumption. It's not going to be changing everything so it looks like chipboard, that kind of thing. So really, I think it comes back to measurement, is if you understand what is going to reduce your carbon footprint, then it doesn't need to be these massive spending projects. It doesn't need to be huge. It can just be small tweaks, but you just need to know about them. So yeah, it's not always a big showy thing. Yeah. I've kind of lost the thread of my question there, but
well, yeah, I mean, for you guys as well, I suppose you do quite a lot of international events. So how do you balance that with the whole sustainability and the budget as well?
When you talk about cost savings, that's always an easy sell. So what has worked well for us when we talk to clients is when we tell them this is an investment in the future. So let's say we have a client who works with us on recurring events. So we might persuade them to invest in something now, and it might cost more, but this event is going to happen again and again, and we're going to reuse the same item. So in the end, you're saving costs. So another example here would be, let's say it's a multiple day event, and we need flowers to make it pretty. And the first day, there will be a fancy dinner and lots of flowers. We keep those flowers, and the next day, when the conference is happening, we reuse those flowers. At the end of the event, what do we do with them? We work with Floral Angels to donate those flowers to care homes, and there you've got your social impact. It makes people happy. So that takes the guilt out of wasting them.
Yeah, absolutely. And for a lot of large businesses now, actually measuring their social impact is really important. I remember, sort of 3 or 4 years ago, before the pandemic, you were getting the large organisations coming to you after the event and saying, oh, but did you by any chance measure our event? No, I didn't. but now they're on it beforehand because they need to be, because they need to show it. So showing that social impact, I think, is really important. So yeah. So just talking about measuring success and just trying to get some sort of learnings from each of you, what methodologies or tools would you recommend for assessing and qualifying the environmental social impacts of events? So Rob, you talked about USmartThing, which I'm familiar with, but perhaps you could explain just a bit how that works, and perhaps if there's any other measurement tools that you've used as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't always have to go for the big flashy things. It can be simple as a bit of paper where you record. I would say back in the day, my predecessor literally went down to the meters and wrote down our meter readings every morning. And I found that folder recently of just historic meter readings every day. But obviously technology's progressed since then, so you can now go to a spreadsheet. We now got like half-hour meter readings that we can download, so we can actually see during the day when our energy usage is. But USmartThing is quite useful because it captures that data of how people are actually traveling to the event. So we have it on our How to Get Here page. So it's a bit like Google Maps, but instead of rating it by rating your options by journey time, it rates it by CO2 emissions. So what you'll find is, especially with Edinburgh, there's two main train stations in Edinburgh, and we're next to Haymarket. So most people will travel to Waverley and like, all right, now we need to get to EICC and still get a taxi or something like that. Whereas really, if they just stayed on one more they've got a 5-minute walk up from Haymarket. And if they use USmartThing, it'll actually show that option. It'll say that, well, if you stay on here, then that's the lowest carbon option for that.
It's a smart tool, for sure, definitely. Anastasia, is there anything that you would recommend, or anything you've seen that you think would work well as a sustainability metric tool?
If we're talking about numbers, with our ESAP, we have a general sustainability score presented as a percentage. So if that percentage, based on all the answers that we completed, is above 75, we consider it green. And also part of our sustainability reporting is, of course, carbon measurements, obviously, these days. But if you go beyond numbers, is the social impact and the emotion. So what I'm talking about is, how do you make people feel about the event that you produced? When I read on our WhatsApp group client responses about the event that we produced, and they're over the moon about how we did everything, obviously the audience liked it as well. That makes us feel good. The client is happy, the audience is happy. And also the social impact from those extra steps that we take to donate to charities. We work with Floral Angels, I mentioned, for floristry. We work with City Harvest for food donations, and Event Cycle for any materials from the event. So where those things end up at the beginning, at the end of the event, you make those people happy because they, for example, they can't afford it, or it just made their day because they got free flowers and they get to see them every day. So that's something that you can't put a number on, but it doesn't mean it doesn't matter.
Warm and fuzzy.
And Judith, is there any tools that you've come across that you would recommend, particularly on the metric side?
Yeah, so there's probably two things I would say. One is for carbon. Whatever you're doing to measure carbon, I would make sure you're doing it in line with things like the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. Just because it's like an internationally recognised standard, it means that if you're working with, companies from all over the world, if you are working with like international clients, it means it all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet. And particularly like your scope 3, that's usually what events fall into. So it really helps to guide exactly where you're going to measure. And then from the social side, I think kind of what I've been banging on about with the social value, measuring social value. Previous to this job, I worked at the Commonwealth Games, and we worked with a company called Social Value Portal, and they were really, really helpful as they basically turned all of the goals and objectives of the games into broken down metrics we can measure and put a monetary value to that.
That's Social Value Portal.
Social Value Portal, yeah. So they basically at the end can go, you have created this amount of social value and here's how you've impacted the community. So if you've got like a really large events program and you do lots of like hiring, lots of work in the community, then it's probably something to look into, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you, that's interesting. And future trends, so if we're just looking ahead, are we all right for time? Got no watch on, yeah. So we're just looking ahead at the emerging trends or the innovative approaches, and there are lots of them out there. How can the event industry stay ahead of the curve in promoting sustainability while meeting the evolving needs of the clients? What do you think, Rob? What do you think?
I think they're starting to come hand in hand. You know, like people are coming to ask about sustainability options and actually finding that they're going to be better for their event in the long run. So if we say, right, we've got access to public transport, that's going to save a lot of people money on how they actually get to the event. So I think they're starting to come more and more in line with each other in how the event works and how the sustainability works as well.
And in terms of accreditation, I know we spoke about this before, about the sort of kind of the trends around that, and I think B Corp is definitely sort of high on the agenda. I know that you were talking about it as well.
Yeah, so we're ISO accredited, but we're also just put in our application for B Corp as well. And the reason for that was I felt it was a bit more of a lively thing. It's a bit more of a community around it. There's more events with it, whereas ISO has just come in and say every year, have a look, yeah, no problem, and then we don't see them again for ages. Whereas B Corp seems to be a bit more inclusive of that.
Anastasia, what are you thinking of as emerging trends for the years ahead?
I think that whatever tools there are going to be, whatever certifications, their popularity is going to be kind of organic, kind of like everybody just started using Google as a search engine, or sneakers just went outside the sports grounds just because it's comfortable. So whatever we're more comfortable with using, whatever tools work for us and easy to use, that's what's going to be used by everyone. We don't really have to worry about it right now that much. Is try them, just keep trying and build a community, share knowledge, and it's just that I feel like in general the whole humanity is big collective mind, and now with social media and the internet is so easy to share all that information, and it's all just happening on its own whether we want it or not. AI is out there. We should take advantage of it, not be scared too much.
Yeah, totally agree, totally agree. But it's actually motivating some people to actually try it, isn't it? That's the hard bit.
Can I make an example?
Yes.
We had a workshop with our team recently, and do you know Midjourney? It allows you to create images with AI, and we had a workshop. We said, okay, we've got 30 minutes, the whole agency, breaking you down into groups. What does an award-winning sustainable marble event look like? Go. And everybody, there was a group for transport, there was a group for materials, a group for catering, and we used Midjourney to visualize our ideas, put it on the deck, send it out to the agency, and it was like such a cool experience to work on things like that together, just spreading ideas, let the creative juices flow.
And giving it a try.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Judith? For next year, the year after, where's it going?
Well, I think we're all in kind of the B Corp trenches right now. I think we've all put in an application, haven't we? So I mean that's
I think we all
we're all having a go. Yeah, I think B Corp's probably going to be seen a lot more. I think in the last year they've had something like almost double the application, so it is really becoming part of expectations for suppliers. But I think from another point of view is that we've obviously come out of COVID events, so the expectations of how to deliver events are pretty different, and people need to obviously be a bit more flexible. So I think being able to kind of provide a hybrid aspect to an event, a lot of people don't want to go all digital or all in person, so just having a bit of flexibility there. And I think there's going to be more hybrid events going forward, and especially from like a carbon footprint point of view, it is absolutely minuscule footprint compared to having an in-person delegate. So just balancing that, I think that's going to be sort of the way it's going to go. Yeah.
And one last thing I wanted to touch on was just the science-based target initiative. So I'm not sure if that's something that any of you guys have had experience with, but it's certainly you have. It's something that we're doing. Yeah, you're a scientist.
I don't know.
But it's something that is being asked of from us a lot, from our corporates, from our big professional services, financial services clients, and it's actually a really, really cool initiative. If anybody wants to check it out, go to the SBTI website because it's really cool. And they do a light version for smaller businesses that's not so time-consuming and onerous, but it's a really good way of tracking your measurement and also putting your reduction plans in place as well. And it's run globally. So like you were saying, it's all around greenhouse gas protocols, and it's run globally. So yeah, it's quite a cool metric. Anyway, have we got time for some questions? I think so, because they've left us alone. Oh yes, Zach's nodding, yes. Over to you, Zach.
No problem. Have we got any questions in the room before I flip over to the questions on the screen? I can come back. I'll kick off with the first one. There seems to be lots of different carbon tracking tools. How do we know the best one to choose? As there doesn't seem to be a standardization of the data required. Where would you recommend starting?
Rob, why don't you have a go at that one? Because we talked about that earlier.
I don't think there's a bad way to do it. The worst way is to do nothing. So as long as you're doing something, as long as you're keeping track of something, you start to see trends, and you start to see what you can work on, what you can't, what your hotspots are, what are not. So have a shot of them all, see what works for your business, and go from there, I'd say.
Fab. Thank you, Rob. Your customers ask about your sustainable initiatives. Do you switch that back and ask them for their initiatives to open up that dialogue and share best practice? If so, what have you found?
Well, yes. I mean, I can answer that one. From my perspective, yes, I do, actually. When I'm allowed in front of a customer, sales team don't often let me do that. But no, I actually have asked them about their sustainable initiatives, and actually have taken away some really good learnings as well. And we also do a lot of sharing with competitors as well. So that's another way of understanding and learning a bit more through your competitor base as well. But yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
It's fascinating the amount of, when I was more client side, the amount of meetings that I'd go into where I'm dealing with an event team, an events arm or a promotional arm of a certain brand that don't actually have much knowledge in the overarching sustainable, initiatives that their company hold. And because, you might be in automotive or you might be in pharmaceutical or something, and your job's focus is events, right? So it's marrying that up to be aligned to the core objectives of a brand.
I think one of the problems is that you haven't got sustainability trained and led people in those buying positions. So they've got a set of requirements that's been given to them from procurement or a different arm of the organisation. So they might not necessarily understand really what it is that they're looking for, or necessarily what it is that they do back at the office in their own spheres, in their own world. We're very fortunate now within hospitality that we're seeing more of that, as we can see today. We're seeing more of that expertise come into play. So I think that's a great thing for all of us.
Yeah. One specific problem area, you mentioned travel of delegates being a major carbon impact point. Do you have any suggestions on how to tackle the travel and waste from exhibitor equipment and the technical production side of things at these conferences?
Yeah, so we track our waste. We work with a waste contractor that will actually measure the amount of waste that we produce, and we can narrow that down to an event as well. So as part of the impact reports, we can say, this is how much waste you produced, this is what kind of waste you produced, and just giving that information and those metrics back, I think it starts to show people like, well, okay, maybe we shouldn't be doing that, so it's more providing that information back to them and then kind of guiding them into a bit of practice.
Amazing, thank you. Anything else from in the room?
Can I just add to that waste point, actually,
yes,
as
of
well?
Course.
So, like with the materials, I think looking at it day to day with the sort of carbon footprinting, a lot of it's like the resources that go into making those materials. So the waste is like obviously a massive part of the footprint, but people are surprised at what the impact is from the production side as well. So it's that whole life cycle piece, really. So if you're choosing like plastic, it's really, a very obvious one, but like plastic over cardboard, the footprint's way lower for cardboard. So it's just, looking at it as like a whole life cycle of that object, yeah.
That makes sense. Anything else? Nope. Okay, I will leave it there. If you could give a hand to our panelists and Louisa. Thank you very much.